Okay guys, what we're going to do today is we're going to work through lesson 1.1, or at least the beginning of lesson 1.1. So a lot of it's going to seem like review, and we're not going to finish all of this, but we are going to do the first two problems in the lesson and then some practice problems. So before tomorrow, we'll at least have that done. The first problem here, problem number 1, is just a simple equation, but it's got some different ways that you could go with it. So I'm just going to show you what I would do first and then explain what some other people might have done first and what you could possibly do. So I would recommend subtracting the 3 first from both sides. That's probably the way to go, because there's a lot going on the left side of this equation. And some of you might at the same time go ahead and distribute that 4. You might want to do that all at once. That's fine too, but I'm going to do that in 2 steps. So then you'll have your 4 times 2x minus 3 equals now 4x minus 32. Remember, negative 29 minus 3 would be negative 32. And then I can distribute that 4. Now, a lot of people want to distribute that 4 first. That's fine, but we're going to see a situation in a minute where distribution isn't necessarily the right thing to do, even though you're tempted to do it. So let's do that in this case. And I'll have 8x minus 12 equals 4x minus 32. Okay, and now it's just a simple 2-step equation. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4x from both sides. And I'll add 12 to both sides at the same time here. So now I'll have a 4x on this side, and I'll have a negative 20 on this side. And now I can divide by 5, or divide by 4 and get negative 5. All right, there's our solution. So the key here is considering when to distribute this 4. You could have done it right at the very beginning. You could have waited to do it second like I did, but you'll see in a second why immediately distributing isn't always the decision that you want to make. So in the case of problem number 2 over here on the right, we've got a fraction sitting outside of this set of parentheses. And you might be tempted to do this. But if you do that, I think you're going to make life a lot more difficult for yourself than you need to. You'll have a negative 2/5 y, and you'll have a positive 6/5, which you'll have to combine with that 2 next to it. So then you'll need common denominators, and we can avoid all of that if we just ignore that reflex and get rid of the fraction right now. The best way to get rid of that fraction right now is to multiply everything here by 5. So I'm going to multiply this first term, which is all one term, by 5. I'm going to multiply this term by 5, and I'm going to multiply this term by 5. So when I multiply the first term by 5, the 5 in the denominator is going to cancel, and I'll be left with negative 2 times y minus 3. That y minus 3 is being sheltered from having to have that 5 affected. Then I have a 10. And then I have a 70, 5 times 14. So I did distribute something here. I distributed a 5 to 3 separate terms, basically. And that alleviated the issue of having this fraction with a denominator of 5. I don't have to work with that anymore. Now I can go ahead and distribute that negative 2 if I'd like to. Could also divide by that negative 2 if you'd like to. But let's go ahead and distribute now, because maybe that's a nice and easy step at this point. Okay, we can clean up the left-hand side a little bit. And then maybe we want to subtract that 16. Okay. Now we've got to talk about this next step. Because when we're working with inequalities, there are situations that we need to really look out for with respect to multiplying and dividing by negative numbers. So when we are multiplying or dividing by negative values, we have to flip that inequality. I'm going to make a note of that here. So in this situation, I'm about to divide both sides of this inequality by a -2. And on the left side, I'll just be left with y. But on the right side, I now need to flip this to be a less than sign, -27. And that's our solution. So another thing that we often do, especially when we have inequalities like this, is we graph these solutions just so that we can visualize where all the values are that satisfy this inequality. So if I were to put the solution to this inequality on a number line, I would maybe put my -27 in the middle. And if I want to show some scale, I can put -26 over here and -28 over there. All of the solutions to this inequality are less than -27. So it's all of those numbers. And I want to remember that because this says less than and not less than or equal to, I'm not going to fill this in because I don't want to think that -27 is a solution to this. It's not. It's anything less than -27, not including -27. So another note that would be useful for us to make over here. Okay. And that's as far as we're going to take the notes for today. I would be surprised if anything that we went over in this lesson is new, but it does refresh your memory of how to work with equations that have multiple steps to them and inequalities and how to work with fractions within those equations or inequalities. Now we're just going to do a few of these day one practice problems. We're not going to finish them all. This is on, I think, the 4th page of the packet. So if you flip to page 4, this is where the first set of practice problems exists. We're only going to do a few of these here in this video, and I would encourage you to do the rest of them on your own time. But what we're going to do is I'll ask you to go ahead and solve one of these, then the video will pause, you'll put in your solution, and then you'll get to see mine. Okay? So the first one I'd like you to do is this problem right here. And go ahead and solve this inequality and display the solution set on your paper using a number line. And now I'm going to go ahead through my solution here, but I'll go through it pretty quickly. I'll subtract 1 from both sides. That's going to leave me with 3x is greater than 15, and then I'm going to divide by 3, so x is greater than 5. On a number line, I'd have 5, and my solution would be all of the values greater than 5. So that'd be your 6 and your 7, and all those would satisfy that inequality. Okay, the second one I'd like you to do is this problem here. And I'm going to go ahead and run through the solution. I would subtract 7 from both sides first, leaving you with -6m is less than or equal to 22. And then you're going to have to divide by -6. So m is now greater than or equal to -22/6. And if I graphed that, I would have my -22/6 right here, and my solution would be all of the values greater than and including -22/6. Okay, the next one I'd like you to do is this one here. And my solution in a couple steps, the first thing I would do is I would distribute this -1 and this 3 simultaneously. I would do that first. So we have 5p minus 4p plus 5 equals 6p minus 18. Then I'm going to clean up the left-hand side there. 5p minus 4p is just 1p. Okay, at this point I would subtract p from both sides, and I would probably add 18 to both sides at the same time. So I now have 23 is equal to 5p, and when I divide both sides by 5, I have 23/5 is equal to P. And I don't need to graph this one, but if you did want to graph it, you could just put 23/5 on a number line and just put a dot right there, no arrow, because that's the only value that satisfies that equation. Okay, the last one I want you to do is right here. All right, and as I go through my solution, I think the first thing to do is again to distribute. I thought about it, and that makes the most sense. So 24 minus 12 plus 4x is less than 4x minus 4. If I clean up the left-hand side, I now have 12 plus 4x is less than 4x minus 4. And I can add 4 to both sides, and at the same time subtract 4x from both sides. And what's going to happen is I'm going to have a 16 on this side, but I'll have a 0 on this side. And this is just a statement that's not true. 16 is not less than 0. There are no variables in this statement at all. This can never be true. So in this situation, we have no solution. There's no solution to this. All right. So I will be posting a set of homework problems for you to do from the textbook, and those will be due tomorrow. Again, hopefully all of this is review.